Right, this is a short video to explain some of the changes that I am making to Democracy for the sequel, which is Democracy 3. This build of the game doesn't have any of the final graphics in, obviously. The graphics are from Democracy 2 and even some of them aren't in, so it will all look completely different. But I'm just going to run through some of the stuff that's changed. One of the things that I've changed is these two voter groups at the bottom here, which are new. I used to have drinkers and smokers, and I've got rid of both of them because they weren't particularly good groups. There weren't that many policies that affected them, so they seemed a little bit redundant. So I've now got young people and ethnic minorities. So there's a lot of the policies aren't in, a lot of the values aren't in yet, but they're two new groups that are going to kind of change the way the simulation works. One of the other things that I should point out, if I go to the finance stuff, this is as it used to be, and so is this. But this is a little bit different. As well as showing you your level of debt and your income and expenditure, this light blue line is also the global economy, which you haven't been able to sort of view properly in the previous game. In addition to that, there's some extra stuff at the top here, which is your credit rating and the interest rate on your debt, and also the debt to GDP ratio. So this is hopefully modelling more real-world stuff when it comes to governments getting into debt. So if your debt gets too high in relation to your GDP, then the bond market is going to lose faith in you. Your credit rating will go down, and as your credit rating goes down, the interest rate on your debt will go up. Previously there was just this hard limit that interest rates stayed the same, and if debt reached a certain level it was the end of the game, which was obviously rubbish. So hopefully this models stuff a lot better, and it's good to also be able to see the global economy. If I look at one of the policies, we'll just pick this policy, corporation tax. There's also some changes here. Actually, I'd forgotten that I just put this stuff in for like cost history and income history. I've just started a game, so everything's flat. But you'll be able to see how like income from corporation tax has changed over time, because obviously it's influenced by all kinds of stuff like GDP. That's one thing. The other thing here is if I change this, you can see that as before, all of these values change, but there's kind of two levels to it. There's like the inner level, which is the current effect, and then there's the kind of eventual level, because some of these changes actually take time. So if I massively put up corporation tax, you see here this number 6, that's how many turns it takes for that to have this particular effect on GDP. So for example, the wealthy will be upset immediately, that's 0. Capitalists will be upset immediately, socialists happy immediately. But this 6 means that this effect is going to kind of fade in over time. So if I make that change, we'll gradually see the sort of thicker bar move towards where it should be, which is the kind of final effect of it. That's one change on here. Another change is this popularity with voters, which we never had before. And you know, that's exactly what it says. It's basically going for every voter and saying, do you feel positive or negative about this particular policy? And 52% kind of implies that we've got sort of half socialists, half capitalists. There's another way to let's cancel that. There's another way. Oh, hang on. Let's revert that. There's another way to look at all that, which is if I go to this chart, which again is all over the place because we've just started a game. This is new, and this is all the policies that are currently implemented and what people think of them. So green is good, grey they don't really care so much, and red is negative feelings. So people are upset about these policies. The bigger the worse they are. So tobacco tax, a bit ironic for them to be most upset about that, but there you go. And you know, all of this stuff is pretty popular. It's just another way of kind of visualizing some of the data. What else do we have that's new? Aha, yeah. This stuff has changed. it actually costs political capital to fire a minister now. And it costs an amount that is kind of relative to how much political capital they generate. So if we take this guy here, he generates 6 political capital, which is kind of a lot of influence. He can get a lot of stuff done. He's kind of a powerful politician in my cabinet. But because he's powerful, he's quite hard to fire. So it's, it's swings and roundabouts. One of the other things that I have here is this button, Reshuffle Cabinet, which will cost me 10 capital. That effectively fires all of them, but without any of the sort of negative connotation. So I can then, rehire them. It's a way of moving people about without firing them, because you couldn't reshuffle in the past. And I think, as I recall, that some of this has changed. I don't think you could see loyalty and experience on potential ministers in the past. There'll be a different system for doing these pictures as well, so you'll never get this slightly depressing scenario where there's 2 profiles looking exactly the same. Hopefully that's never going to happen again. Under the hood, a huge amount has changed. There's a lot more simulation values and some that you kind of aren't going to see. But one of the major things is there's support for kind of private provision of what in the previous game were public services. So if I look here, this is the State Health Service, and that's pretty much as it would be. But I also somewhere have private healthcare. So private healthcare is being provided in the absence of the State Health Service, and you can see that there's an input there. So what this basically means is, if I just scrap the State Health Service, then the private sector will kind of take up the slack to a certain extent. There will be negatives with that. Everyone will be paying for their healthcare, and obviously you can see these lines here going to the poor and middle earnings. It's considered that the rich have enough money that their healthcare costs are fairly trivial as a percentage. But obviously they don't like paying for private healthcare. They'll be paying one way or the other, because you will have to pay as government for the state healthcare. It will have to come out of taxes. But basically this new system, and it's not just for that, it's also for schools, I think. That's the private schools as well, yeah. So the same with pensions and housing and everything. So basically this version of the game will have support for that. You can scrap all of the state provision of everything like that and have just a pure free market system if that's what you want. And there will be negative results to that to do with equality and so forth. This private healthcare provision you can see up there was affecting equality, and so private pensions and private housing. You can obviously compensate for that with other stuff, so it depends how you want to do things, really. I think those are the major changes that I can think of at the moment. I need to go to another turn to do that. Yeah, this is a bit of a... Oh, yeah, this stuff is slightly different. When you're picking policies, it will be red if you can't actually implement that policy at the moment, because I don't have enough political capital, which makes things a lot easier when you don't have much political capital to sort of see what you can do. The other thing is it will tell you how popular it will be. So it's implied that there's, opinion polls and focus groups that will kind of give you a rough idea whether or not it will be popular. Obviously popularity isn't the only consideration. One of the other things is that the kind of right-click menu that I've always had, it actually knows where you're clicking it now. So if I go up here to sort of transport or infrastructure, and I select it, then it'll automatically be in the right place. So if I want to change tax policy, introduce new tax policy, I'm already at tax. That sounds like a trivial thing, but it actually makes it much easier to play. There is a lot of other stuff kind of under the hood, but I'll kind of like talk about that when it's closer to being done. It won't look anything like this. It will, it will all look lovely. It's just that I thought I'd talk about some of the simulation changes. I don't think there's much change to that stuff, or actually to voter groups. Oh yes, there is. Yeah, this is something I forgot about. this graph, this has always happened, that you can see like how happy socialists are over time, for example. You can see their membership level over time. But this now changes down here. So you can actually see what's influencing membership of the kind of socialist group. Let's see if I can pick out another one that's got more changes. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so here's environmentalists, and this is kind of like what's making them happy or sad. They're fairly sad at the moment because of pollution. And this membership stuff, this is what's actually driving membership. So here, the petrol tax, they're fairly pleased about that. But the existence of the petrol tax is not causing people to become environmentalists. In fact, maybe it should have a negative effect. So the only thing that's actually increasing the number of environmentalists at the moment is the level of pollution. And now I can display this to the player, I might introduce a lot more stuff that will affect membership. Because the idea is that not only do you get to sort of, make individual groups happy or sad, but you can also, build up the size of them over time. So, if you want an agricultural economy, you could persuade everyone to become farmers or whatever. So, that's new. The layout of this has kind of changed quite a bit. And the way this works behind the scenes is completely different. But other than that, I think those are the most visible changes at the moment. So I hope they all sound good.